Welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be going over the best drugstore powder foundations with you. So I'm just going to be trying on each one and showing you the coverage. I have 3 powder foundations that I would like to share with you today. And these are my absolute favorite from the drugstore, the ones I use the most. And the first one I'm going to talk about is the Maybelline Super Stay Full Coverage Powder Foundation. I love this one. This is the one I use more often than any other one, just because it's very, very fine, like milled and smooth. It's almost like so fine milled that it almost feels kind of creamy in a way, or kind of is a little creamy. You can see a little bit of powder like coming up when you do this, but it's not like super bad or anything. And I usually just tap it in and then I'll just go and start applying it. It's very super easy to apply. It's not necessarily full coverage, I will say that, but it is very buildable and it's not too cakey or anything like after you apply. And it does cover up my redness pretty well. I'm not going to say it covers it up 100% because it's not 100% full coverage, but it does a very good job of it. Like, if you can't just tell how red I was like prior to applying it and then how well it covered, you can just see the difference as I'm applying it. So this is one of my favorite ones, like I said, just because of how fine milled it is. Like, it's almost creamy in a way. It can look a little powdery the more you apply, but as long as you have done your skincare and all that, I don't find it to be like a super big issue for me. But as you can see, the coverage is very nice, and I usually just use like this dense Up and Up foundation brush. This is like from Target, to apply my powder foundations. This is literally my favorite brush. They do have a similar brush that applies very similar by e.l.f. It's some kind of foundation brush, but it's a little bit more puffy, bigger than this, but it's very similar in the way that it applies and the way that the bristles are. But this one is my absolute favorite. It's super soft and it applies very well. So this is the coverage that I usually get from using the Maybelline Super Stay, and mine is in the color 110 Porcelain. And if you can tell, it is a slight yellow undertone. I usually go for yellow undertones to help minimize my redness. I don't like to go for pink undertones, even though technically I am a pink undertone, because I'm kind of trying to conceal the redness, not bring it out. So yeah, so this is the coverage of this one, and I will go ahead and remove this, and I'll be right back with the next one. So the next really great option from the drugstore is this NYX Stay Matte But Not Flat Powder Foundation, and it is very similar in shade, let me show you, as the Maybelline. This one's maybe a little bit more deeper, but I feel like it only looks like that because this one, the NYX one, is a little bit more thicker of a powder, more like of a powder consistency. Mine is in nude, and I'm just going to apply this and show you the coverage. I do the same thing. I basically just tap it in. This one is a bit more powdery, like a lot more powder comes up, bigger chunks of powder. But when you apply it, it applies very similar to the Maybelline one. I'm going to say that none of these are full coverage. This one is not full coverage either. But again, it is buildable coverage. And it does cover my redness pretty well. You can just see the coverage starting to appear. Like I said, this one is a buildable coverage too. And just like the Maybelline one, it can get a little bit powdery or cakey looking if you do not apply your skincare and everything first. You have to make sure your skincare is on and hydrated and all that. This one does kick up a lot more like dusty type powder when you're applying it than the Maybelline. This one is a little bit cheaper though than the Maybelline. I believe the NYX one is, I think it's like $9 or $10 or something like that, but the Maybelline one is like 12, I believe 12 or 13, something like that. So as you can tell, the coverage is pretty decent for a powder foundation. It's a very light coverage. Like I said, not full coverage. But it is covering pretty good. So this is my second favorite powder foundation from the drugstore. NYX Stay Matte But Not Flat. And the coverage is very decent. It's not like super cakey or dry. It looks a little dry right here because I have a little breakout going on and they're drying up right now. So yeah, I have dry skin right here. But everywhere else you can tell it does not look like cakey or anything like that. You can still see like my skin slightly peeking through here and there, which is fine. I usually like that. And a lot of times when I'm using a powder foundation, I will apply like a concealer around my nose area just because my nose is what usually pops through with the skin. But all in all, I really am happy with the type of coverage this foundation has. I'm just going to go ahead and remove this one, and I'll be right back with the next one. The next powder foundation that I absolutely love from the drugstore is the Makeup Revolution powder foundation, and this one is the Conceal and Define. Mine is in the shade P6, and again it's that kind of yellowy shade. They're all like really good and similar in the shade range, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and start applying this. This one out of all three is definitely the more powdery one, except for this, the powder on this one feels a bit more creamy, kind of similar to the Maybelline powder foundation. And out of the three, I will definitely say that this one is the most coverage. This one definitely does give the most coverage, but you have to really be careful. You see all the powder it kicks up, so I literally just go like that. But definitely this powder, like I said, feels a little bit more like on the creamier side. Very similar to Maybelline, but it is still very powdery, but not when you apply it. When you apply it, it does not look super powdery or cakey to your skin. I'm having like a really red face issue today, but yeah. So as you can see, it did really neutralize my redness fairly well. One reason I'm a little red right now is because it's a little bit warm where I am. So yeah, but yeah, after I would apply this, I would obviously apply my bronzer and whatnot so that it wouldn't look so odd. Bring some color back to my face. But yeah, as you can see, it's very, very buildable coverage, which I love. Sometimes I just pat it in instead of rubbing it, depending on where I'm putting it, because I feel like it will stay longer or get more product in that area. I feel like my cheeks and my nose are always like my problem area with any foundation besides my chin. My chin, I have a hard time with any foundation with it being cakey, and then my nose and my like kind of like cheek area, I have a problem with it covering. It's weird. But yeah, so this is the coverage from the Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define Pressed Powder. Like I said, this one out of all three has the most coverage, if you ask me. You couldn't tell, it looks more full coverage than the other three. Like I said, this one is my absolute favorite though, just because of the formula and how fast I can apply it without spending too much time. But like if I'm gonna go somewhere and I don't want to wear a cream foundation or liquid foundation, I definitely use this one just because it is fuller coverage. And for everyday use, I just use these two. I go between the two, whichever one I feel like using that day. And so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed hanging out with me going over the best drugstore powder foundations today. And if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will definitely see you guys in my next video. Bye!